Before we get into today's video, I'd like to ask you a question. Have you ever thought about making money for game mastering? If you have, go to GameShopsBasement.com. There's a banner ad at the top that can take you some more information about learning how to do just that. And now, on with our feature presentation. Hi. So on today's Basement Banter, we're going to talk a little bit about a subject that's been kind of coming up. We've been talking about in the basement here and there. I've got some suggestions that can help game masters this time. And also maybe kind of teach players like some game balance theory and stuff. So in this kind of some of the things we do now, or like teaching people how to like improve their gaming experiences. Here's something that's not just what we do at Game Shop's Basement, something you can take to your table. So you guys may have heard me grousing lately about some of the brokenness of what's become 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, particularly in terms that, monsters just don't keep up. And so like an example of, and I think you guys heard me about a particular fight with trolls. How stock trolls in the monster manual are +7 to hit, and yet they couldn't hit player characters without rolling a natural 20. It was mathematically impossible for them to hit player characters, and I would do armor class audits of the player characters, and the armor classes were legit. The armor classes were not outrageous. They weren't wrong, and a lot of the armor class was based on magic item accumulation that to me seems reasonable for their level and how long they've had the character and how many adventures they've been on and how long they've been playing. And we enforce the magic item attunement slot thing at our table. So I'm a big believer in that attunement slot enforcement thing. So it was legit. I mean, they legit have these high armor classes. Somebody could say, well, just don't let them have those magic items. I don't think so. I think they deserve those magic. I don't think that they're unreasonably accumulating that stuff. So the monsters just aren't keeping up in 5th edition like they did in previous editions. So, for example, and it's not just the 2-hit things, it's also just the saving throws. So one of the big examples that's been really disappointing to me is Ghouls. Now, Ghouls they're like big baddies for low level. Okay, by the time your character is 10th, 15th level, they're not really afraid of ghouls anymore. Shouldn't be, okay? But for those like tier 1, maybe tier 2 characters, especially if it's a big bunch of ghouls on tier 2 characters, ghouls should be pretty frightening. And ghouls are kind of macabre because the whole idea of the ghoul is it paralyzes you and then it eats you while you're still alive to feel it. So they're supposed to be, dark, grim, macabre, creepy things. And so not only do the ghouls, not only can they often not hit players, mathematically just can't hit them, but when on the rare chance that they roll a natural 20 and actually hit someone, the saving throw number for the ghoul paralysis is 10. So even without any bonuses, and player characters all have some kind of bonus. So even without any bonuses, even if a player just had flat roll, there's a 55% chance, a greater than half chance, that ghoul's paralysis power won't work. So the ghoul can barely hit you anyway. And on the off chance, if the ghoul needs a natural 20 to hit you, it's only got a 5% chance to hit you. It's got a 95% chance to miss you. So the ghoul's got a 95% chance to miss you. And even on the 5% chance that it does hit you, there's a greater than half, 55% chance its power doesn't work. So, yeah, poor ghouls. I mean, I really catch myself feeling sorry for 5th edition monsters. So today, I'm going to kind of show some of the ways that we can kind of help, not necessarily make up for it a little bit without bending the game too much or changing D&D or just write your own game, something like, no, without writing your own game, without, changing it too much and having a bunch of crazy table rules. So people are like, well, yeah, his or her game may be pretty cool, but it's not really D&D because they have too many table rules. It really changed it too much. So without changing it too much and still keeping the D&D 5th edition flavor, there are some things we can do. And so we're going to go ahead and get into some of that right now.
So this masterpiece from 1988 is the Orcs of Thar for the known world, or the Gazetteer world as we called it back in 1988, or these days it's called Mystara. But the Orcs of Thar was the first product to consider that players might want to play something besides the traditional old school Tolkienish races, something besides a human, dwarf, elf, halfling, gnome, etc. I mean, the original first edition player's handbook thought it was edgy, allowing half orcs. Ooh, that was like the edgiest thing in the original first edition player's handbook. So the Orcs of Thar actually had player character orcs, kobolds, trolls. Yes, trolls with all their regeneration power and everything. Bugbears, ogres, goblins, hobgoblins. So the Orcs of Thar product, this was the first product to consider that people might want to play more than the basic original player character species. And this was really the gateway that opened it up. And so what happened here was, earlier when I talked about trolls not being able to hit with their +7, I called them stock trolls. Specifically, I referred to them as stock trolls from the monster manual. Well, if you're going to play a troll and you're a player character, then you need to be able to level. So the idea was that these species could have character classes. So instead of just having a stock troll, you could have a troll fighter or a troll barbarian. Instead of just being a stock orc, your orc could be a rogue. Your orc could even be a wizard. Now, they flavored the wizards for the portrayal of orcs in Mystara. They called them witch doctors. And they had focuses or foci that they called gree-gree. And they had, like, these gree-gree were, they cast bones, and they had little necklaces of skulls. And a lot of times in the art, they would put like a bone through their nose and stuff. And so they portrayed them as witch doctors, but they were like, the wizard class, or the version of wizard class that existed in the game at the time. And so the idea was that these other species could also have character classes. And so when the party is fighting a bunch of orcs, and the orcs have a cleric healer that's healing them up as fast as the party can tear them down. Now, this cleric healer is going to be kind of orc flavored in the Orcs of Thar, so chances are they're going to be like a shaman of Karash, which gets into some Mystara lore. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but the point is that these species could have character classes just like the players could. So they don't have to be stock orcs. They don't have to be stock kobolds. Now, often they are, okay, because that's the stock creature, I think, represents the average creature of a given game world, whether it's Exandria or Mystara or Greyhawk or Dragonlance or what have you, your homebrew world. That's like the stock, creature. But exceptional creatures, you might think in an orcish tribe, most orcs are going to be warriors. But maybe there's an orc that just went roguish instead, because maybe they got kicked out of their tribe and had to survive on their own, became like a scout rogue. Or maybe they just weren't as strong as some of the other orcs. Maybe they just were born with a lower strength stat potential and never really filled out and bulked up like an orc fighter or barbarian. So maybe they have the rogue class, and when they fight, they use sneak attack more. So there's always going to be exceptions and individuals. So enemies can have character classes. And so on that note, we're going to kind of go there next. But yes, this is a beautiful, beautiful picture of the Orcs of Thar. Thar is, I'll just have to do my own video on Thar because he's just so cool. But that'll be for another day.
So as far as this idea goes, that enemies might have character classes, this is it took me a little while to notice that 5th edition design apparently doesn't really believe in this, because for almost 40 years, and all the other editions of the game that there have ever been. First through fourth, and boxed set D&D, and other versions that there's been, and other role playing games. NPCs have their own character classes. The player's handbook describes character classes in plural. So when the player's handbook talks about clerics are, or bards are like, or barbarians, many barbarians have a tendency to, or the player's handbook describes a world in which there are many barbarians, in which there are many rogues, in which there are many wizards. Your player character party are not the only ones in the world. But if you look at 5th edition books, NPCs are not given character classes. They're given stat blocks. I noticed, much to my dismay, in Tomb of Annihilation, that it explicitly says that Dragonbait the Sauriel is not a paladin. He's paladin-like. No, he's a paladin. I read Curse of the Azure Bonds, the novel that came out. I played the original module. I played the original video game. I was there in the 80s. Dragonbait's paladin. So the thing is, your player characters are not the only people in the world with these character classes. Where would they have learned it? Where did your ranger learn to be a ranger if there wasn't a ranger to teach him? Where would your wizard have learned to be a wizard if there wasn't a wizard to teach him? I remember reading the Drizzt Do'Urden novels, and Drizzt emerged from the Underdark as a fighter, and he came up in this valley, and the valley had this blind ranger in it that didn't see him for a drow, but this blind ranger had lived in that valley so long that he kind of had it memorized, and he just never left his valley. And so that particular blind ranger could function in that valley, just couldn't function anywhere else without taking the blindness penalties. And so, Drizzt was taught to be a ranger from a ranger. So, you could have conventions where wizards go hang out with other wizards, where rangers go hang out with other rangers, and these big conclaves in the woods or wilderness. Doesn't have to be woods. Rangers are adapted to all kinds of environments. But the point is that it's a little more work for the DM, but it's so worth it if NPCs have their own classes. So, and what really makes it challenging is when the player characters have to fight NPC barbarians, and the barbarians rage and get damage resistance. So when the party has to fight another party that has big bruisers in it that have damage resistance, just like they have big bruisers in their party that has damage resistance, this makes D&D challenging. Okay, so anything players can do, NPCs can do. Okay, this is where one of the ways that 5th edition has just lost its way. Okay, and as Game Shop's Basement grows, and as an online game master, I get more and more online presence. I never expect Wizards of the Coast to ask me to showcase anything. I never expect to get a sponsorship from them because I'm honest and real. And I'm telling you how it is. And when I tell you 5th edition has lost its way and Wizards of the Coast is on crack, it's because I'm being real with you. Okay, so it really, I don't expect them to ever offer me a sponsorship. I've accepted that. But I love this game, and you probably do too. And so, there are many franchises out there that we fans treat with more love and respect and honor than the people who currently own those franchises, and that's just how it is. But so back to how D&D can work better at your table, and how it can be more fun for everybody when it's more challenging and more consistent, a more consistent universe. So, for example, just some things that came up this past week as I was preparing to say this to you today. I was thinking up about some things that just came up this week. There was a gentleman who contacted me about an Undead Pact Warlock. He's making up a character, a Verdant Undead Pact Warlock, and he specifically asked about a certain flavor of appearance that he could use for the first level ability, Form of Dread. And Form of Dread, awesome. First level ability. He says, yeah, it's cool to just run up at people and be scary and make them run away. Well, why don't NPCs get to do this? They should. The Undead Pact Warlock in your party shouldn't be the only Undead Pact Warlock on the whole planet. I mean, really? There aren't more? Just like, there aren't more barbarians who can rage and get damage resistance. Or some of the other things that came up this week include things like an eloquence bard using unsettling words. Is there only one eloquence bard on the whole planet? No. Okay, are the players going to be possibly confronting and fighting other groups that might have an eloquence bard? Yes. So there's no reason why NPCs can't have character classes. In fact, it's stupid if NPCs don't have character classes. Now, is there never a time to just make a quick and dirty NPC? No, not every NPC needs a character sheet, and this is a lot more work from the DM because 5th edition has a lot more powers and things to keep track of than ever before. That's another commentary I'll talk about one day. But the other things that come up, something that came up just yesterday is Wrath of the Storm for a Tempest Cleric. Hey, if your party's fighting a Tempest Cleric, whip out Wrath of the Storm back at him. The 5th edition design people don't call me up at Game Shop's basement and ask me, how to do things. But so I don't know why. So I can't give you their rationalization because I don't know it. But for some reason, there's some kind of thinking that NPCs just don't have character classes in 5th edition. They just have stat blocks. Absurd, absolutely absurd, because the D&D world has clerics or fighters or rogues or wizards or warlocks or sorcerers or what have you, and they're going to have sorcerers with cool exotic sorceress origins that have abilities. They're going to have monks. Your party are not the only people on the whole planet that have these abilities, that have these classes. And so another one that comes up, there's a person who plays a Rune Knight fighter, a Knoll Rune Knight fighter, uses the Cloud Rune and the Fire Rune a lot, gets a lot of mileage out of those. Now, one of these days, they'll find another Rune Knight fighter. Is it going to happen soon? Probably not, because to me, the Rune Knight fighter is very Viking Nordic flavored, and they're not in that part of the world. But in that part of the world, I think the Rune Knight fighter would be more common because it would be more culturally done there as a martial archetype as opposed to other martial archetypes. So, but yeah, anything that players can do, enemies can do. And enemies can do it right back at them. Cast the same spells, use the same abilities right back at them. Have just as many hit points, have barbarians shrugging off just as much damage because they're raging, all that stuff. And that makes things more challenging and more fun for the players as well. So I've got a few more ideas, but this is already run kind of long, as to things that can be done in spite of the fact, let's see if I have it here within arm's reach. I was going to hold up my monster manual. I don't think I have it, but there are certain things that can be done even though the monster manual is sort of lacking right now. There's more things we can do too, but that's one idea for today, is that NPCs should have their character classes, the same abilities that players have. I don't know why 5th edition abandoned this, but they did, and it's not good for the game. All right, so, again, I said Wizard Coast will probably never ask me to sponsor anything. They'll probably never sponsor anything I do. So, all right, so we'll see you later, and we'll see you in-game. If you'd like to support us here at Game Shop's Basement, there's several things you can do. Of course, the easiest, quickest, and freest one is the standard YouTube like and subscribe thing down below. You can also sign up for a game, join one of our tables, or you could do all these things. You could go to startplaying.games and give reviews to game masters that you enjoy, like me, Game Master Murray, or any of the others that we're bringing along pretty soon. So we'll see you in game.